All right, guys, so make sure that when you watch this video, you are taking a few notes that you can bring with you to class. So that way, if I'm asking you questions in class, you have something to back yourself up. Also, please don't forget that you need to comment on Edmodo in order for me to give you credit for watching this video because I am taking a grade on this. Okay, so what we're going to be talking about tomorrow in class is how America now, in this point in time, starts to build an empire. Um, the United States used to feel pretty secure, being that it was in the middle of two pretty vast oceans and kind of kept to itself for a really long time. George Washington had even given um, his fellow countrymen advice, saying, you know what, that America, the United States, just needs to stay out of all the yucky stuff that's happening with the European countries and needs to just focus on the West. So things change a little bit after those 150 years, and America really starts developing its foreign policy. Now, what is foreign policy? This is a phrase that you will need to know. The word foreign has to do with other countries, countries other than the United States. The opposite of foreign is domestic. Remember, domestic means home, foreign means outside of the home, or in this case, the United States. Policy, this is a way of doing things or a way that you deal with other people or issues. And so when you put these two words together, foreign policy, you see the way things are dealt with other countries. And so we're going to be looking a little further into the foreign policy of the United States. So foreign policy refers to a country's policies towards other countries. And there are a few characteristics that define foreign policy. International anarchy, what that means is it's a concept saying that, okay, anarchy, what is this? This is a form of government, right? Where there is no government. If we had anarchy in our country, there would be no rules, there would be no regulations, we could pretty much do whatever we wanted, and it would be like social Darwinist. It would be survival of the fittest. And so what some political scientists have looked at is that in the international spectrum of things, like looking at countries as being individualized entities, there is a sort of anarchy about it because nobody can stop a sovereign country really from doing the things that they want to do because they don't need to follow any other laws other than their own because they're sovereign. Remember, the word sovereign was one of the vocabulary words that we learned in the past. Sovereign means that you make your own rules. And so the countries all do that individually. And if you look at them as individuals, there is a state of anarchy because nobody can tell them what to do. Balance of power. What this means is that what happens is the countries kind of know each other and know what's going on with one another. And if they see that one country is getting way more powerful than the others, then the less strong countries get together and form an alliance against that one other country in order to balance out the power. Now, control of U.S. Foreign policy. In the United States, the people who have control of U.S. foreign policy are the executive branch and the legislative branch. The president, along with the Secretary of State, handle the day-to-day stuff with the other countries, the diplomacy, the relationship between the two countries. The leaders from the executive offices will speak with each other. And the legislative branch also, Congress has a lot of power because they're the ones that will approve funding for any of the programs that the executive branch wants to happen. And they also have the power to declare war. National interests. Anytime we deal in foreign policy and we're looking at our relationship with other countries, really we're looking out for our own best interests, the interests of the nation, what is best for us. So all of these things kind of make up foreign policy. Now moving on, we're going to talk about the Spanish-American War. Now, what was happening is that Spain, which used to be one of the most powerful empires in the world, was becoming really weak. Their empire had been reduced to Cuba, the Philippines, Puerto Rico, and a few smaller islands. And in 1894, the United States raised tariffs. Remember, these are taxes on imports or exports as part of their foreign policy. And this was a problem for the people who were living in these areas who were exporting things to the United States, because remember, supply and demand. If people want less of a product because the price is too high, then what's going to happen is that your prices are going to be lowered, you're going to be making less profits, etc. So the US and their tariff policy greatly affected some of these Spanish colonies. It led to unemployment in those areas. And also, what happened was this guy who was living in the United States, Jose Marti, he went over to Cuba and tried to start a revolution. They wanted change, they wanted something new, a better society for the Cuban people. They no longer wanted to be a colony of Spain, they wanted to be independent. So what happens is the Spanish come into this area and they decide to keep all of the rebels, all the people who are going against the Spanish, in little villages. They kept them contained, they kept them quarantined, they kept them closed off, not allowing them to leave. And so this causes a lot of death, it causes a lot of disease, and this is a problem. We in the United States don't like this. So in come the term yellow journalism. Journalists. We looked at journalists in the last chapter when we looked at muckrakers. So journalism has to do with printing of newspapers, news reports, etc. Now, so what was happening in each of these villages really raised humanitarian concerns. Now, humanitarian concerns are when people are concerned with the way people are being treated. And so the newspaper started printing off things that were related to humanitarian concern. And if you notice in today's newspapers, in today's media, a lot of things are sensationalized. You know, they want to make a really big deal out of some things that are really not that big a deal. And during this time, you have Joseph Pulitzer and William Randolph Hearst. And these are pioneers in the newspaper industry. And their newspapers started using this technique, exaggeration. And the reason that they did it was to sell more newspapers. And the things that they were exaggerating on were the humanitarian concerns that were happening to the Cubans and the way they were being treated by the Spanish. And so they took this and they totally ran away with it, and people were really upset. And so this tactic right here, all of this put together, is what came to be known as yellow journalism. And here we see an example of yellow journalism. It's ridiculous. Abraham Lincoln was a woman. We all know that this is not true, especially those of us who are history buffs and have taken the courses. But if your everyday average citizen went and saw this at the store, they'd be like, what? I can't believe this. And what's going to happen is chances are this magazine is going to be bought. And so yellow journalism, the objective was to sell more newspapers, and the things that they were writing about had to do with humanitarian concerns in Cuba. So some of the triggering events of the Spanish-American War. In 1898, the Spanish ambassador, okay, so the person who represents Spain, wrote a letter, de Lome, that's his last name. And in his letter, he called our president, President McKinley, weak. And so this upset a lot of Americans. They were not happy with that. So with all the stuff that's going on in Cuba, we sent the USS Maine over there to make sure that the people and the property of the United States were protected. So we sent a bunch of armed military men over there, and then mysteriously that ship explodes, and it killed 258 seamen and also injured many, many more. And so this caused outrage in the United States. It sets off protests, and this was one of the biggest triggering events. Okay, so what we're going to be looking at specifically in class is this reflection. some part of a public statement by President McKinley over what was happening in Cuba, and we'll go over this in class. So what inevitably happens is war. We did go to war, and we fought on two different fronts. We fought in the Pacific, and we also fought in the Caribbean. We had a victory in Manila Bay, and during this time, here's Teddy Roosevelt before he was president. He was Assistant Secretary of the Navy, and he got together a group of cavalry, which are, military men on horseback, and they called themselves the Rough Riders. So there's a picture of, here's Teddy Roosevelt right there and all the Rough Riders. And they had a major victory. They defeated the Spanish at San Juan Hill. And San Juan Hill is in Cuba, and that's where this picture was taken right after their victory. So then, after the Spanish-American War, which only lasted 4 months, the U.S. takes control of all of the Spanish territories, and now they become property of the United States. So here in this slide, you can see a picture of the areas that we went to. Here you have Cuba, and that is where the Rough Riders won that great battle at San Juan Hill here. And over here in the Philippines, that's where we won in Manila Bay. So the Spanish-American War becomes a turning point for both Spain and the United States, because this ends their colonial empire. They are no longer an empirical power in the world, and the United States now emerges as a world power. They show the world what they can do, the power of their navy, and also grows the property and empire. Okay, so this is the end of our PowerPoint. Please make sure to remember to comment on Edmodo. And tomorrow, if you have any questions on this, please ask. We're going to be going over, like I said, McKinley's presidential address about the matter, and we'll also be working on a graphic organizer. Make sure that you bring in your composition notebooks. If you don't have a composition notebook, remember, it is mandatory. See you in class tomorrow. Bye-bye.